Oops.
To me?
All right. Couple things. First of all, on the agenda, the item for purchase new technology to allow these kind of meetings to be done better. I'll stand in support of that. I think it's a very wise expenditure of the American Rescue Plan money and probably what the money was intended for. There's still be plenty of money left over for other things. I understand the question like that. So if we have an opportunity to spend on broadband, most is still there. Second thing is, we had a really good presentation at the planning commission last night. I think it was even better than the one that Rebecca Harvey gave to the board in November. She seemed to have expanded it quite a bit. And there was a sense of that meeting. I don't think it was stated explicitly by anybody, but she was going to be engaged on a little bit of a longer term process to review the language of the open space ordinance drafts. And I just wanted to understand better and know kind of like who is directing that process, if it is happening, and does she need more money budgeted for that? That's something that maybe ought to be addressed tonight if you keep the ball rolling. Thank you.
Yes, and actually Kurt mentioned that to me, and I think maybe I talked to Rod about it today. I want to add that to our agenda to have a discussion about where we go from here. I appreciate your comments about last night. I thought it was a great meeting also. And there was something else that you asked. Who was directing it and where? Oh, budget. I think we are about at the end of the scope of work as she had presented us. So if we were, then we need to get with her and find out. But I think it's money well spent. I think we spent money in our budget.
You want to add that under unfinished business?
Yeah, if we could. Well, yeah, sure. And while we're talking about the agenda right now, I would also like to add, so maybe at the end, at the end of new business, a discussion of the Leone SRI agreement that they requested we sign. And I sent that document to Mr. Fall and he has reviewed it and has comments, so. Just like to add that so everyone knows. All right, so any other public comment? Yes, Scott.
Many years ago, while I was attending the university, I was fortunate to have lunch with the university president one day because we were talking about some issues affecting both the university and the student body. I was chosen to meet with him. I'm dating myself because it was at his house and on his front lawn were protesters for the Vietnam War. And I had the opportunity to ask him if these protesters bothered him at all, to which I learned a lifelong lesson that he said, no, it was shocked. And I said, why not? And he said, because there's not many of them out there. Most of those are just freshmen and sophomores who are just starting to sprout their wings with protest. He said, your juniors are studying and your seniors are looking for a job. I said, well, how will you know when it's important? He said, when the juniors and seniors get it. The reason I mention that is it seems in reading this, and I beg forgiveness, as you mentioned, it's been about 2 years since we had live meetings. But it seems like with some of the entries in here on prioritizing the reoccurring issues, I begged the board, I think before, that because something comes before the board does not mean you have to react to it. Sometimes you don't have to do anything. That's why we have variances, and that's why we have the planning commission and whatnot. But it seems like in the last few years, like with the marijuana, maybe with Bob Cole or whatever, or some other issues that are in there, they're brought up that you want to deal with them, but it doesn't mention why. It doesn't mention who's going to benefit. It doesn't mention what the flip side of it would be if you don't do anything. And so I just, once again, would like to caution the board that because someone, something presents itself, raises its hand and says, geez, I think we should do this. If it's not fulfilling the direction that the board and the planning commission and everybody wants to take this township, it can be ignored. You don't have to deal with it.
Surely noted, thank you, Scott. Yeah.
I'm Dan Russell. And I just wanted to just mention that the open space preservation meeting, I think was good. I think a lot of, it seems like we talk about open space like it's this fantastic thing. And it is, so long as we don't use it for development where the township residents clearly don't want development, right? If we want to use open space in near where the sewer and water is, which is where the master plan says we encourage development, I think that's that cherry on top of that ice cream sundae, where it's like, yeah, you can get your sewer and water. We encourage this, and if you use this, you get these added bonuses. But we're not dangling it out there so that in the midst of all of the neighbors who have clearly spoken, out where I live, near Kavanaugh Lake and over on Pierce Road, everyone's pretty adamant about, we all lived here and moved here for a reason. And the reason was, we didn't want subdivisions. So it's not like, oh, look at this beautiful open space. Oh, and there's a subdivision. Oh, there's a beautiful open space, and there's 12 houses clustered together on 5. That's what Dexter turned into. And I don't think anyone wants, well, I can't speak for everyone. From the feedback that we've gotten over the last couple of years since the whole thing started, and the tow yard thing, I think it's pretty clear that residents don't want development. So if we're using the open space thing to spur development where people don't want it, I'd say it's a bad thing. If we're going to use it to spur development to help offset the sewer water costs that everyone's paying right now, I think it's a great thing. And then private roads is the same deal. Private roads popped up. It's just like private roads don't really have a place because the residents have spoken, and kind of to dovetail on what Scott said. We don't have to have private roads. We haven't had them. So to add them now spurs development, which we don't want. And then if you go to any of the land conservation meetings, there is a cost to development. It isn't always a plus to your balance sheet to have extra people living in the township. So that shouldn't be a goal. And going back to what you hear people talk about in these meetings, residents, we don't want that. So I guess the board and the commission should maybe just keep that in the back of their minds when we're talking about the open space, where we use it and how we use it, private roads, where we use it and how we use it. That's all.
Very good, thank you.
Maybe I have 20 more seconds.
20 more seconds.
20 more seconds, because it is on here, and he enlightened me on something. Again, think tonight that there was talk about taking the sewer and putting it across the freeway. And I think that, and you've got a bill that you're going with the American Recovery Act for some funds for communications, where Dexter just got about $900,000 for sewer projects that it comes in under that. The building down on the 150 exit, the new hospital, is there because the sewer connection is there. We need to concentrate on getting south of 94 and having the utilities there so that we can get those hospitals and those med buildings, which is what is in our main,
Zoning map, yeah.
our main, map going forward. That is where it's supposed to go. And we need those facilities across the city.
Very good. Anyone else? Lonnie, Jack? Okay. Okay, well then we will move on with the approval of the consent agenda, which contains the minutes from November 3rd, December 7th. Presentation of billing. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped right over the presentation. So we are not able to do the presentation of Citizen of the Year tonight. The company we used for engraving was suddenly not available mid-December, so we had to switch. So we're not ready with that tonight. We will do it in February, but we do have a presentation from Richard Malone from Point and Pay. And they are one of the platforms that allows for online payment of things, your water bill, sewer bill, anything that you would pay to the township. So we're looking at maybe implementing a platform like that. And so Amanda's reached out to him, and I think he is here tonight on the Zoom call to give us a presentation on Point and Pay. Are you there, Mr. Malone?
Oh. He is a co. Mr. Malone, are you on your phone or a laptop? Yeah, I can't unmute you on your phone. I made you a co-host so that you can be seen and heard through your computer, but we can't do it through a phone. Oops. He just dropped off.
I'd say it's a good thing. Let's just do that.
Do you want to move to something else till he comes back in?
Sure, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that? Because we can approve the consent agenda, which contains the minutes from November 30th, December 7th, presentation of bills, committee reports, board reports. So I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda. Second. Seconded by Sandy. Thank you. I'll have to do a roll call vote because we're all here. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I just have a question. Presentation bills, Process Solutions for $4,600. You know what that's for? Sounds like the engineering firm.
Yeah, it is the engineering firm, but I'm trying to think of,
Process Solutions is generally water plant.
Are they doing engineering work for the township or are they doing?
they do more than just engineering work.
Yes, Process Solutions. You know, that's a good question. Miranda, do you know? Yeah, let's make sure, because sometimes, yeah, we really became, and, I think that you know, think about Miranda? Okay. Okay, so we have the motion by Mr. Carey by Selena, I can see that sufficient eyes for pass the motion. Just to let the board know too, there was some correspondence I believe we all got from Ms. Amy Meyer, I believe her name was, and she was happy with the way the Arctic Coliseum looks in the back with all the new developments there. She said there's a bunch of trash that goes up there. So I let her know that that was the city and encouraged her to reach out to the new mayor, which she did, and the mayor directed her towards Hannafin. I believe she sent the letter to all of us, so I just want to let you know that that was followed up on, and she's now taking it up with the city. Okay, well, we are at our regular agenda. Oh, I see Mr.
He's back.
He's back.
Can you hear me? Richard's here.
We got you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yep. No, I apologize. I did call in from a phone line, so you're very accurate, and I left the meeting and came back through my computer. I do have a presentation. I'm going to go through it briefly, but I'd like to introduce myself. I work with a company called Point and Pay. I've been in the business 9 years. In Washtenaw County, we do represent the county. We do process not represent, but we process payments for them. Ann Arbor Township, Ypsilanti Township, and I'm sure there's several others, but we are the preferred partner of BSNA software, meaning that we're integrated. And when your residents look a bill up online, it's going to transfer over the payment amount due, the account number. And I think my notes tell me that you guys are looking for tax or utility and permits. I'm sorry, not tax. But the nice thing is that we're integrated. And I do have a presentation if you'd like me to share my screen, or I could just answer questions. I don't know my time slot here.
Well, we can give you 10 or 15 minutes. How long does the?
I can go through it pretty quick. As I said, I've been doing it for 10 years. So I'm going to click on this green icon I have here and see if it lets me present.
Not for tax purposes.
There we go. Perfect. Correct.
So if this is just water and sewer,
Water and sewer permits.
why would the board? Water and sewer department?
Well, it would be permits. I know Carol has a lot of requests for paying for different permits online. So that would be helpful for the zoning thing.
All right.
So I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So Point and Pay is, as I said, the preferred partner of BSNA software. We go through an annual audit that's called PCI compliance level 1, so that our clients do not have to. Meaning PCI stands for Payment Card Industry Compliance. It's not a law. It's only compliance for the credit card processor. In plain English, this means that we go through the audit so you don't have to, and we process the payments. We specialize in government, courts, clerks, law enforcement, utilities, education, and healthcare. I'm from Keego Harbor, Michigan, so anybody that's been down I-75 and knows where Oakland Mall is, if you look across the street, we're owned by a company called North American Bank Card, and they do give us the ability to process payments and deliver funds in what I call a consolidated settlement, and that includes all 4 major credit cards, which include Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. We also offer e-checks, which for residents, I know we're not doing tax now, but that means that if you logged in and you want to pay online and you had a $2,000 tax bill and you did not want to pay a 3% fee, an e-check fee would be a $3 flat fee, which means if your money's in your checking or savings account, it's much more affordable, or it's a better price. But I'm going to start from the bottom. Consolidated settlements, what I just talked about. For the e-checks, we do ACH verification. I'm going to talk about exclusions manager also, because for utility billing, if Richard was going online paying with the e-check and that check kept bouncing, we could stop that person from paying online. I talked about the integration options. The recurring billing is an option also. E-billing, for those of you that are familiar with BSNA, e-billing is really not an option because with BSNA Online, you're able to look it up right through BSNA Online. And there is a shopping cart option. We do customize the web page, which I'll show you. You have the option of putting messages on receipts, and the unique IVR, which is an interactive voice response system, would be unique to the township. I'm going to move on here. As I told you, this one you'll see the city of Trenton when I said we customize your payment page, because we know that when bill payers go online and they see something that doesn't look like the township, they go up to the corner, they usually hit that red X. As I said, up to 1,500 characters on your receipt. So if the township's having an open house or a fundraiser or a 4-H fair, you're welcome, or even anything the township that's not political would like to put on the receipt, you have the option of doing that. I think this is the best thing we offer. If the township has BSNA cash receiving at the counter, we simply add a tender type to cash and check, meaning that they don't have to log in to another payment site to take a payment. They're able to take that payment right in BSNA cash receiving. And it's fully integrated, and the point and pay reporting, which is one of the slides I'm going to slide through, is just going to be secondary and backup for the township. If you don't have BSNA cash receiving, then you could use the point and pay virtual terminal. And I'll give you an example. Farmington Hills Fire Department wants to take payments, or police department. They don't have BSNA cash receiving at the counter. Well, you can use the point and pay virtual terminal. The difference is you're going to use the point and pay reporting to update your data and download it through Excel to update your data. But if you do have BSNA cash receiving, we're going to go back a screen. This is the screen they're going to use. In-person counter receipt, we do not require that a receipt is printed because we are a web-based company. That is completely up to the township. I can tell you that since COVID started, I don't think any of my clients in Michigan, the 500 clients I have, are printing receipts. This is the point and pay reporting. I'm going to go through it really quick because if you have BSNA, this is going to be secondary to you. But I think the most important thing is a lot of vendors provide payments. I'm going to go back a few screens where they'll fund Visa, MasterCard in 2 days, Discover maybe in 3, and American Express in 5 days. And e-checks would fund like a normal check. Point and pay, because we're owned by North American Bank Card, we're able to deposit all your money in a consolidated settlement, meaning that reconciliation is much cleaner. You don't have to chase down what credit card company funded when. I talked about the IVR briefly. The toll-free number is unique to the township, meaning that unlike our competitors, they will not have to know a jurisdiction code. When they call in to make a payment, we'll know they're calling from Sylvan Township to make a payment to Sylvan Township, And it is integrated with BSNA software also. The money deposits in a consolidated settlement, I already mentioned, 48 hours from the end of business. Meaning that Monday's payments will be deposited Wednesday night after midnight, not Wednesday morning, because it's 48 hours from the end of the day. Because the credit card processing goes out in a batch at the end of the evening on Monday night. To board a new client, we say 5 to 7 to go live. Depending on the time of year, it's usually 4 to 6. Right now, I know it's 4 to 6, but just before summer or winter tax, it gets a little busier. But for BSNA, it's pretty cookie cutter, and at 4 to 6 weeks is what I'm comfortable to promising to my clients. Even though we're owned by North American Bank Card that I showed you, that we employ over 1,500 employees here in Michigan, you will have a dedicated account manager, which is me, and a project manager that only handles our BSNA Michigan accounts. So you're not going to get a different person every time you call Point and Pay. And even though we're owned by a big company, we like to keep the look and feel of a smaller company. And we do charge a $500 setup fee. Our cost to board a new client is $2,000. And we realize that that's a big expense. So we've broken that up into a $500 setup fee, $50 a month maintenance fee. We provide you 2 card readers per department at no cost. Absorb pricing is available. In Michigan, I don't have any clients absorbing for tax because the tax money does not belong to the township or the city or the village. It has to be distributed. So if you want to use a credit card, that money, there's a convenience fee that's associated with it. That is 3% with a $2 minimum. And this might help you visualize what I talked about earlier, that if you want to pay with a credit card, 3% on a $1,000 tax bill would be $30. If you have the money, or if you have the ability to transfer that money into your checking or savings account, you can pay the same bill online for a $3 flat fee up to $10,000. Over $10,000, it's a $10 fee. I want to say this is one other thing that sets us apart is the fact that we do not have a cap there. They can pay up to, I want to say each check might have a cap of 100,000, but other than that, there's no cap. As you see, I live here in Michigan. I'm the sales executive. You'll have my cell number and my direct line to my home office where I'm sitting now. So if it sounded a little jumbled, I apologize, but I tried not to take up too much of everyone's time. And I'd be happy to answer questions while I'm here.
All right, well, thank you. We appreciate the abbreviated version. This is really easy, and we do have BSNA, so that's a nice feature that it really with BSNA cash receiving like that. Does the board have, does anyone have questions?
I do.
Okay.
I remember when you were clerk and had to accept a large payment in regards to a development that was going on.
Mhm.
So
Well, the payment, so that Sandy's thinking of a performance bond that a developer put down in cash. So we have
Yep.
2 very large checks. So probably those types of payments would not be made through the.
I'm going to ask a question myself. So performance bond, is it part of your BSNA, is one of your products?
No, this was for, to make sure that the development agreement was adhered to, so it was monies that we held in case the developer, I don't know, left and didn't do the roads, then we could do the roads. So I think Sandy's thinking about, that was a time that the township took in a large amount of money But I think that those are pretty few and far between. And even the fact that it was cash was unusual. Most of the time we get something from the bank, you know, a letter of credit or something. So I think that's a good question, but it doesn't happen very often. And when it did, I don't think they would probably make that.
So I can speak to that, that it's not, you know, Orion Township, which is close to me where I live. They have a hall rental that they take a deposit on. They have to refund it. And what we've done in the past is we've set up a sub partner that's not integrated with BSNA. And the nice thing is we're able to deposit into whichever account the township would like us to deposit. So you can debit from that account. It does not necessarily have to go into the tax or the utility account. So we can work with you and customize those features for you. And I think the answer is, and forgive me if it's not, is that we don't charge a convenience fee when a refund's issued, meaning that if you took the payment and issued a refund, they're not gonna have to pay a fee on that. So I hope that helps.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you being here and for your abbreviated version. This is great, and I think the board will be discussing this certainly probably next month. And we'll get
Yep.
back to you in the meantime if we have questions.
Yep, well, I wish I could have been there in person, but I appreciate you letting me interject and join your meeting.
We appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we are to our regular agenda. And we have it before you, and we added under unfinished business, revisiting the open space preservation development. And under new business, I requested to add the Leone Township SRI agreement discussion. I will make a motion to approve the agenda with those additions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. All right. Our attorney Rob Fall is going to be joining us around 7:30. Do you see him on the Zoom call yet? Okay.
Not yet.
So the marijuana situation, he has questions for us, and he's gonna guide us on that. So I would like to skip that one. And go to the National Flood Insurance Program. So this is just continuing to go on. I've been in contact with Mr. Fall. He sent an ordinance he had done for a different community. I sent that to Matt Ochapinti at the state, who handles the floodplain department, and he advised on it, and he said we should make sure our maps are updated and gave me directions on how to do that. That was a couple days ago. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. And I may have Carol or maybe Sue Dickinson, who's on the call tonight, would be surprised. Help me, because I'm not sure even when I look if I'll know what an updated floodplain map is compared to a non-updated. So I'm gonna see if I can get some more assistance on that. So that is an issue. Unless Sue has any comments on it, or Mr. Fall does when he gets here. Okay. I'll talk about that. But that's just an ongoing matter. We just need to kind of gather some more information. All right. Hello, Mr. Fall. Do I see you're joining our meeting now?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Mr. Thal?
also, yeah.
Okay, all right, wonderful. Well, we just pretty much got to the beginning of the regular agenda. So the update on allowing marijuana businesses is first up on our agenda. And I told the board that we can talk about it if we had some questions and guidance for us. Because I know when we spoke, we were
Okay.
sort of really broad about, we wanted to get your guidance on marijuana, and that's a pretty big umbrella.
Yeah, because, so if you're going to allow for marijuana in the township, there's, number one, there's 5 different types of facilities which you could allow adult use facilities. You have retail, processing, growing, transportation facilities, and testing facilities. And so just from a general standpoint, in terms of some of the information regarding the license up to $5,000, but administration and enforcement, they cannot use for general revenue rates. So they couldn't go into the general fund. It's got to be used for those exclusive uses from your budget. So the only way that you get general revenue is if you get retail. And so for each retail sales establishment, last year you got 28,000 for that from that state excise tax. That number may fluctuate up or down given any single year, but that's per retail establishment. That money comes in that's unregulated in terms of your ability to expend it however you would as part of the general fund. So you have those 2 things, and so then you have to think if you're thinking of doing this, it's like, okay, well, what do you want to do? Which of those
You keep dropping, Rob.
ag or industrial zoning district? So
We keep
that's
here and there, Mr. Thal. You're dropping out here and there.
all right. What I'm going to try to, maybe it'd be better. Let's see. I'm just going to try to dial in so that I think the video,
Okay,
I'm in my car, so I think the video is probably slowing down my connection. So can I just try to dial into the Zoom?
To dial in, Rob,
It'll
we
just be
can't,
like a-
we can't unmute you if you dial in on a phone. Even
Oh,
as a
you can't unmute
co-host.
me?
Can
Can I mute?
I can't even make you a co-host like that.
Okay.
well, it sounded pretty good right now. I guess we'll.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me if it's breaking up. Let me know.
Okay,
Okay. But so you have the retail, processing, growing, transportation facilities, testing facilities. What we need to know, and again, the only thing that you get revenue from that is unrestricted that you could use for other purposes is from retail. So if you want to do something with marijuana, you got to think about first, what are we trying, where would these uses go? How many of the uses would we be looking for in the township? And realizing that, the only general revenue is retail. The others, you get licensing fees, and those are used for administration and enforcement. Typically what happens is you end up hiring a marijuana administrator out of those funds to basically oversee the operations of the marijuana facilities. And, so I don't know in your township where you'd want to see these uses go, but that's probably the first and foremost is like, how many of these types of facilities would you want to be looking at, and where would you want them to be located? And then another thing, so growing is an ag, but I would recommend if we were to do something in that area that we would do indoor growing only. So you don't allow for outdoor grow because it's really almost impossible to control the odor from an outdoor grow. So are you able to hear me?
Yes, that was great. We heard
Okay.
that whole
Yep.
spiel uninterrupted.
Okay, good, good. So, I guess I'm looking for, direction, more direction from the board as to what you're thinking. Or if you have questions.
Well, so this is Kathy, and I'm thinking, I know I voted for this when it came up before us. Since then, we have had our joint meeting with the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals, where we identified some priorities for ordinances. And this was not one of them that came up. So as I'm thinking about how we are budgeting our money and how we're spending our time, I would be in favor of the overall idea. But I think we have maybe other priorities that are more pressing and would benefit the township in greater ways. At this point, as we've looked into this more, if we can only use the application fees for administration and code enforcement, then that's hiring someone. And we're not gonna have that many, so it's not gonna be full-time, it would just be a small gig for somebody. I don't know, I'm kind of changing my views a little bit, not on the marijuana itself, but just whether that fits into our priority schedule for the board.
I agree with that. I think if we, the only unrestricted money we could use is from retail establishment, and we discussed in the past that Bogles is the only place that we would even allow that. I mean, it's limited to where we could even allow the retail establishment. The money from the licenses is not unrestricted money. I don't think it benefits the township in the way that we initially discussed.
Yeah, I think the retail side does, that's it.
Right.
What did you say? I'm sorry, what did you say?
The retail side is the only benefit to
Right.
the township, unrestricted funds.
Well, to me, there is a lot of decisions that we have to make, and one of the reasons that I am in favor of this is it is one of the few ways that the township can increase revenue. Everything gets more expensive all the time, like our IT right. That, what we pay for them for the year just went up, it doubled this year. Everything gets more and more expensive, and what are we doing to increase the revenue? We have to have revenue to pay for these things. And as far as hiring somebody with the $5,000, I'm thinking that there's probably somebody that can be shared with other townships and cities that need the same thing. We don't have to pay somebody's full-time salary. We're just would be another person that they would be doing that with. And it's going to take forever to get this done. And we know that we will not have any increased revenue if we don't do something. And it's going to be a long and arduous process, deciding where and all of that sort of stuff. But I think we need to start.
So let me just weigh in a little bit on that. So if you do move forward with this, it's kind of twofold. You have zoning provisions that will, so you have to do zoning ordinance for adult use marijuana facilities. And so that's going to direct where they can be located, and have the restrictions, on odor control, on, normal site plan and construction issues, but probably the biggest one is where they're going to be located. And so, and then the restrictions, and normally you make it a special land use so that you'll have public hearings on each one. And, it would be approved in that manner. So it's not just permitted use, it's a special land use. Anybody within 300 feet would get notice, when you actually have an application. But to start with, you got to go through your zoning process and develop a zoning ordinance provision amendment, get a public hearing on it, and then it's got to come to the township board. The other aspect of it is a police power township board ordinance that talks about the licensing of that and how many of, what uses that you will license and how many of those of each UL license. So there's kind of two different ordinances that we'd be processing, but you kind of look at the zoning and the police power, they're going to come up, probably we want to time them so they come up to the board at the same time. But the planning commission has to really do some studying to determine where and what standards they want to apply to the locations.
Thank you.
So if you were to start, you would start by, initially sending it over to the planning commission to study, where appropriate locations would be and what the appropriate restrictions would be.
I was gonna move to table this ordinance until a later date.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I was gonna move to table this discussion on creating this ordinance to when it becomes a higher priority for us.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion from Kurt, supported by Amanda, to table the ordinance. Later time. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
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 Thank you. Okay, so that item will be tabled for now. So moving on to the National Flood Insurance Program. Mr. Thal, I was talking a little bit about that before you came and giving them background on conversations with Matt Ochapinti and you, and I mentioned to Sue Dickinson that perhaps I'd be seeing if she could give us some guidance on the maps. And just really informing the board that that's something that needs a little more investigation and information before we have the appropriate ordinance and resolution.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest part, is to determine what the mapping for the township is at this point. They're mapping the state, and so some areas are done, some areas aren't done, and the ordinance terms will be a little bit different depending on whether the mapping is done. But there really is no downside to the township itself for enacting a floodplain ordinance. It's going to allow people in the floodplain to be federally insured, but it does require some more work on behalf of the township by the building authority. When they issue building permits, they have to make determinations regarding the water levels and whether it's in the floodplain area.
Okay, that's right. And I had talked briefly, started a conversation with Matt Forrester, the building official, on it. I know other municipalities in the construction agency have a floodplain ordinance, so we wouldn't be the first ones in the authority to do so. But it's certainly worth a conversation with him. And while we're gathering the rest of the information, I can do that. I don't know if Sue has any comments on, yep, I see her raising her hand. Oh, okay, hang on a second, Sue. Just when you thought you could come back and start.
Okay.
Okay, Sue, we should be able to hear you. No, we can't hear her.
She's muted.
Oh, but I could unmute myself. Can you hear me now? Okay, all right. Kathy, I'm actually a certified floodplain manager, so I would be glad to help you with looking at the maps. And it's my understanding that all of Washtenaw County maps were updated in 2012 now. So I guess that's 9 years or 10 years ago. But that was a huge improvement from whatever year it was before that. But I can definitely help you look at that.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Sue. That is good news. I've been struggling with this, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Great. Does the board have any questions about the floodplain insurance? Okay. All right, next on our agenda is the discussion of the Sylvan Township taking online payments for services. We heard the presentation tonight. We want to gather some more information. Everybody feel comfortable to make a motion at this time, or wait and look at his presentation more in depth and revisit it in February?
Yes.
So table this, then I'll make a motion to table this item.
I'll second.
All in favor of tabling, say aye. Aye. Say nay. Okay, moving on, updated fee schedule. I still don't have an update on the updated fee schedule. So I suppose I'll make a motion to table this.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, nay. Motion carries. DPW Administrator Bob Skull pay allocation. So this is, it has come up recently that Bob Skull's salary is being paid entirely by Sylvan Township. He does some work on the sewer, water and sewer authority. I think our previous DPW used to have part of his salaries come from the water and sewer authority. And I think that has slipped through the cracks with our transitions here. So Sylvan's been paying his salary. The authority is willing to pay him for his time he spends on sewer. So Bob is working with me, with the authority, and Ron and Pam Burns on the authority to determine what that allocation will be. Our accountant said probably just a flat percentage would work, because sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. So we're working, Mr. Skull's working that out, and that will be really the authority who would be, approving that they would then compensate us.
I think we did approve it. It's just a matter of how much.
Okay, okay. Well, very good. Well, when's the next water and sewer authority meeting, Is it?
Pretty soon.
Okay. I think we're gonna address them.
Oh, next Wednesday.
Oh, great. All right. Anybody have any questions or? Okay. Next is our franchise agreement with the city of Chelsea. And Mr. Thal, we're glad you're here for this. I'll just try to give a brief overview. This is it's for the portion of the Westchester development which is within the city limits. And the city of Chelsea has a franchise agreement on the books from, I think it was 2007, I believe. But it didn't have a legal description in it. So we talked with Mr. Thal. He felt better just kind of starting from scratch. So he's done this document. And I know I sent it and some people had questions. So while he is here today, and Mr. Thal, if you want to put a finer point on it or do some.
Yeah, I'll address it a little bit. So there's an area in the Westchester development that is located in the city. The city's not able to provide their services in that area, I think, because of some difficulties in getting to it. And so the township is able to provide the services for sewer and water in that area of the development. And yeah, it's correct that there was at some point in time a negotiated franchise ordinance, it looks like, that the city adopted, but they never attached a legal description to what area it covered. And there's also some objectionable provisions in that ordinance that they have. They tack on an extra fee onto the rates, which I don't think is lawful because they're not providing the customer any service. They're not allowed to just charge an additional fee. That would actually be an unlawful tax on them. And so I really didn't want to be a part of that type of agreement. So I drafted a fairly simple franchise agreement. It's under the Michigan Constitution says that, you know, if you're going to use another municipality's rights of way, which we're going to be using the city streets to provide a utility service, we have to get a franchise from them to do that. And we're limited to a 30-year franchise. Now, the franchise is terminable at will, and part of that is because if it's not, then it has to be put on for a vote. So if you have an irrevocable franchise that you grant, then it has to be voted on by the public. So, you know, while we say it's 30 years, it still could be, you know, it is still revocable at any time. But that's the way most franchises are going to be, because we're not going to put them up for an election and spend the costs on doing that. And then also, you know, once they're hooked up to sewer and water, you know, a judge isn't just going to let you like shut it off or let the city say, oh, no, you can't provide them sewer and water anymore. That would be a hard thing to sell to a court. So I'm not really concerned that it's terminable at will, because once the service is provided, you know, generally speaking, it's going to be provided for those 30 years. And even after that, most of these types of contracts are just extended. So I guess with that said, I'd entertain any questions people might have.
I just had a question. So for Westchester Farm, they're gonna invest all the money in this, right? Sylvan Township isn't building. the
Right.
For them and then recovering.
Right.
Over 20 years, that investment. So if anything.
Correct. They're,
If the city of Chelsea wanted to provide that service, fine. We would just abandon our infrastructure in place and it wouldn't cost us anything.
right. It's just a hook up into, you know, whatever the connection is. I mean, if it had to be unconnected, I would expect that they would have, you know, if they're going to stop a connection and reconnect somewhere else, I would assume they're going to have to pay for those costs. But yeah, I mean, all the costs of the hookup and everything would be associated with Westchester at this point.
Isn't it my,
It looks like,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say Sue has her hand up also.
Isn't it my understanding though, that once all the infrastructure is in place, after a year, the township takes it over? It's turned over to the township, I should say.
Yeah, when they're done with the construction, it will be the township's infrastructure.
So if it got abandoned somewhere down the road, then technically we would be responsible to abandon it.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's see what it says about, yeah, I mean, technically, it is our system. So it is part of our system that is there. If for whatever reason it was unnecessary, it would just still be there. You know, I don't know what else we have to do to it, but I don't see it not being used for the full time, but because I think there's some systematic problems with the city getting to it to provide the service.
Correct.
Any questions on,
And one thing is, I don't know that the city will agree to this either. I mean, we're putting it out there, but you know, they may come back with revisions they want to see, which, you know, they could try to go back to the point where they're charging an extra fee again, but I would go back to them and just, I really don't think that that's lawful to do. To tack on an extra fee for them, you know, when they're not doing anything.
yeah, that's right. I sent this to the city and realized I may have done it too soon, so I told them to wait on it. And I wanted to make sure the board here had an opportunity to ask questions and, you know, maybe tonight we can authorize me to sign this, so then when and if the city does, then that will just be a seamless process.
It's a fairly straightforward agreement. some of these agreements can get very complicated, but I tried to draft it as, to cover the township, but at the same time, provide some simplicity to it. So it's not overly complicated, because I don't think it has to be overly complicated.
I'll move to have Kathy Kennedy sign this and carry it on forward to the city.
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. Motion by Kurt, supported by Rod. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Rob, we added something real quick under unfinished business, and it's the open space preservation option.
Okay.
So that, Ms. Harvey made a presentation last night to the planning commission. And so I think there's interest and will to revisit it, but we were wondering, is it, this point, should we be saying what we would like to give the planning commission some direction? On what,
there's two things here. First, a planning commission should try to operate independently, but then there's also the issue of, I don't want a planning commission to spin their wheels and do things that the board's not interested in. Spend the time and effort and, money and public hearings on something that, when it comes up to the board, it's just not what the board was looking for. So, it doesn't hurt to give the planning commission some direction, but, again, they're supposed to try to be an independent body. But ultimately, when the ordinance comes up to you, you have to determine whether you want to win it, or you can adopt it with amendments as long as they're within the context of what you can consider. You can do that. So whether you do that now, if you want to provide them a little bit of guidance, I don't think it should be, where you're totally directing the whole process, because, they can work with Rebecca, and she can come up with maybe something that everybody really likes that you might not even hear of.
true.
So might not want to over control it at this point.
Yeah. Oh, I think we lost him.
So the question is, are we going to, we the township, are we going to contract with Rebecca to work with the PC to do a review on the SPD?
That seems like a pretty good idea to me.
I think that's what I heard last night. Is we're looking for the board to authorize the spending of money.
All right, I'm back.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I lost my signal for a second, but it's back.
Okay, very good. Well, Kurt was just mentioning that he felt like he was hearing at the planning commission last night that the planning commission was looking for the board to authorize expenditures for Ms. Harvey, because I think she's probably used up her original scope of work. I think it was about 5 hours.
Right.
Pretty close to it. So that's certainly something that we could vote on.
Right. Yep. But if you did have some really strong viewpoint as a board, you could express that to them. Or wait and see what they come back to you with.
I feel like from some of the comments I heard last night, I think several of the members are thinking the way that I'm thinking right now, thinking of some of the things that she presented last night. So I'm happy to let them take the lead and do their work. And there's, she was really fantastic and introduced a lot of things that we didn't think about. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I like working with her a lot.
Yeah, she's pretty outstanding. So I'd be in favor too of budgeting some money. I believe her first, was it $500?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want to authorize similar amount or get a scope of word from her and see what she would.
I think the scope of work might be better because then we don't have to keep revisiting for more month.
Take with her. And I'm not sure how long she feels like it would take. And we will be meeting in January on a budget meeting, so if it was something we needed to have a speedier answer than February, we can vote on it.
I think that'd be okay. Motion on anything?
Always unclear on when we can motion.
I'll make a motion that we ask for a scope of work for this project from them.
Yeah, scope, cost, schedule.
Okay, I'll support that. So motion by Rob, supported by Kathy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. All right, now we're to the new business portion. And the Chelsea Square Development Agreement and final site plan. I'm gonna shuffle my papers. It is itself its own packet. All right, so we have a lot of documents here tonight, development agreement. I believe, Mr. Fall, you had a couple late revisions this evening. Or
Yeah.
afternoon, rather.
So they they just closed, I believe, today. So it's no longer Trupiano, but it is the new company that purchased it. And they go under the name of Sonoma. I don't have it right in front of me. I think it was Sonoma LLC or Sonoma Properties, but I think I gave you a sample motion that has their name in it.
Yes, you did, and I'm really hoping.
And
that-
so, yeah, so I changed the name and signatory for them. Then I also put in that the water line is 1 inch, because that was left blank. I put in that there's actually 3 parcels associated with it. One parcel is not going to have the buildings on it, but it is associated with the plan. And then the total acreage for that. And, and then I'll have to make some revision to it based upon if the board approves it, approves the site plan with the conditions put on there by this Midwestern Consulting.
I might have to step out of the meeting real quick and grab that motion. I know there was quite a few conditions, and I'm really sorry. I thought I had it with me. There's a lot of papers tonight. But Mr. Knowles is here tonight, Mr. Thal, so you should know if there's any other questions or things. He is here present tonight in person. And
Okay.
if either of you had any questions, and I really apologize if this was unorthodox for me to leave the meeting. But I'll
There's a
be right
lot of papers.
That's a lot of paper.
Yeah, from my end, I think, it's pretty squared away. We'll just have to make, some revision that the final site plan is subject to conditions, in the development agreement, but substantively, the development agreement, in my opinion, is where we need it to be, and I think they're in agreement with it also.
I didn't get a chance to look at the engineering drawings, but each unit should be separately metered. Is that part of it?
Yes.
That is correct.
Because at Hillcrest, it seemed like we put 4 meters in one unit's basement, and that just doesn't seem right. So, we wouldn't want to repeat that.
That's correct. We're not repeating that this in here.
And then the other point that I was talking with Kathleen about earlier is the prepaid taps, the 20-some, those funds, when those were prepaid, all were supposed to go towards the county bond. So these additional 60, water taps and 50 sewer taps, you're talking quite a bit of money. If just say that's 100 taps total at 5,000 each. What's that?
Consent agreement was for
Yeah, but this is after, this is on top, the consent agreement was capped at a certain number of pounds for that parcel.
Right, the extra ones I believe are at current rate.
So are we talking 50,000 in additional tap fees? That should all go towards the county bond. Trying to be conservative here, so, you know, it's 50,000, that should go towards the county bond. If it's 500,000, I mean, right? And we all agree that should go towards the bond. That's how the system is
Well,
designed.
I don't know, I don't know, and that's a good question, and I think internally we have to, and figure that out, or the guidance from the auditors. I think that's been a question we've had for a while. I know what I think happens, and I'm not sure it's on solid, like, I'm not sure
I think, I don't know who your bond counsel was at the time. But, that's a good question for bond counsel as to what the expectation was for tap fees. What was the whole portion to be put onto the bond or, some other formula.
Right, so that would be the county that dealt with the bond, but we have an agreement with the county that I believe states that any additional funds that come in have to go towards paying off. the
It
bond.
may be, right. Well, because the TAP is actually paying for that system infrastructure. That is what the TAP is to buy into that system.
Correct.
So yes, we need to make sure we are correctly understanding where that money goes and get it there, because that's a lot of money. And
Yeah.
there's been a lot of money coming through on these developments, so.
So other than that, I didn't have any issues with the development agreement. I thought, you want a motion to authorize you to sign that?
I actually have a very lengthy motion
Oh, okay.
here to make. Mr. Thaw helped us with that because there are several conditions. I think Sue has been over the engineering a couple times. So I think all of there's eight here that I can list, but does anybody have any questions, or should I just make this motion at this point? We can discuss. Okay. I move to approve the final site plan for the Chelsea Square development conditioned on compliance with Midwest Consulting's final site plan conditions as contained in the January 7th, 2022 letter to the township, and further approve the development agreement for Chelsea Square with the owner Sonoma Investment LLC, contingent on approval by the township attorney and final revisions to incorporate such conditional approval of the site plan, of the final site plan. I'm sorry. The conditions contained in the January 7th, 2022 letter are as follows. Number one, all outstanding items from our December 30, 2021 review. Two, gas company approval for the work within their easement. Three, approval from adjacent property storage unit facility for grading and fence removal replacement on their property. I believe we got that today. Number four, daycare stormwater pond to be discharged across this site with the easement extended to the west. 7, properties to be combined. 6, culvert to be placed under emergency access drive to the north, just south of the gate. 7, water and sewer permits from the Michigan Eagle office. And 8, soil erosion and sedimentation control permit from the Chelsea Area Construction Agency. Let's see what happens.
Now there's a couple more, I think.
Is there more?
Yeah, the next
Um,
page, Kathy,
yeah.
had 2 more.
Yes, 9, thank you. Approved development agreement signed following engineering approval of contingencies. And 10, all fees, insurance, and bond as required within the development agreement provided to the township. Thank you. I missed the second page. So that was long, but in a nutshell, approving.
I will second.
All right. The board have any discussion or questions? Mr. Paul or Mr. Knowles?
No, all the conditions are as expected.
Very good. Okay, then we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to Sylvan Township.
Yeah. All right, their next item is technology to allow virtual viewing of township in-person meetings. So we are looking at investing a little bit of money so we can make this sort of hybrid meeting flow better and work for everyone involved. Mr. Thal has said that we would be able to probably use ARPA funds for this, American Rescue Plan funds, because it is preparing our office for post-COVID. COVID is preparing our office for this situation. So, you know, I've asked townships in the city of Chelsea and no one has the answer to this yet. Everyone's kind of searching for technology. I was hoping someone could say, this is what we use and it's great. So we're searching and we've got a wide range of price tags from something cheap that's a few $100s to a whole room setup that could be $5,000. Dave Seitz mentioned to me that he has personal experience using something called the Meeting Owl. And that is like a camera and a microphone that sort of like will phone into the person who's speaking. It has a 365 camera and it coordinates with Zoom. So we would be able to use that. That's about $1,000. So Amanda, do you have anything?
I agree. Initially when I presented this, we had not heard of the owl yet. So I think that's an option for us to look into for sure. I mean, there'd be the additional funds of purchasing a new laptop that we talked about. The TV's rather old, so we might need to look into that, but that would still be less than the Logitech system.
The Logitech.
But I would like to learn more about the owls for sure.
And you got a hold today. and
Yes.
Requested it.
A presentation. And if anyone wants to look at this owl, you can go on to Amazon. They have a little video, but I'm sure the presentations could be good and worthwhile too.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear, it sounds like we all agree it's a wise use of funds.
Dan, is that sort of your business? You're or not
I was
really?
wondering about that too.
Yeah, ours are more tailored to corporate, big corporate ballroom and stuff. It'd be way overpriced.
We could put a dance floor.
We could certainly help, but
Okay,
I mean, we do this every day. And for situations just like that, except our stuff's probably over engineered for what you guys want.
okay.
So,
What's wrong with Zoom?
Zoom works good, but right now you can see like our board table is, it's not easy to see. Last night at the planning commission meeting, we had 7 people at this, 6 feet apart. So poor Sandy was almost in the lobby, couldn't hear very well. The speakers weren't really sufficient. We had trouble hooking up the laptop because the TV's getting a little dated. It's not that old, but technology marches on. So this works okay right now in a pinch, but I really envision something where, because they can't see you if you're giving public comment. So if we had something here where it would, you would be able to stand up, people see you.
What's the
That's
city
what-
of Chelsea?
Right now, they're just using Zoom, and the last time I talked to Jane, I attended a CapDart meeting last week. And they're just using I think they have a stationary camera that they always have. But nothing new, special or anything for their return. to
Don't they have
in-person
something that
meetings, so.
picks them up individually and each one of them talk about?
I don't know. I'd have to see. And I don't know if they have a person who does that either. That's the other thing, is the trade-off is, do we have something that you plug and play and it's ready to go, or someone who has to be the designated camera person who maybe swivels the camera when someone else is speaking, which I don't really think we need to get into something like that. If we could just have something simple that would allow people to see who's speaking, and facilitate the participation from home, that would be good.
But I spoke with the clerk, with Laura Kaiser, and she said that there was a gentleman that they were considering to put in charge of that, but I don't think we need that here.
Right. Okay.
This is just a little janky and clunky, and it took some time to get it set up and everything working so that we could use this.
Right. And we could still incorporate Zoom as the platform. We just want to find a better way to make it presentable for people at home and easier, so.
And maybe Zoom has something, if you call it that.
They might, I know the OWL, they said it incorporates with all the platforms, it incorporates with Zoom and all those, so I think a lot of people that are making these things are making it to be compatible, but.
You could take your sound system that you've already got here, use these microphones, feed that into the computer. That would let them hear you. The camera thing is its own, whether the folks not in the room care to see who's speaking or want to see a close up of Kurt, you know, I don't know. A wide shot might be okay.
Right,
So I mean,
right.
a couple tweaks to this system might
Might
do
be
it for now
sufficient.
until maybe all this goes away, or maybe this is the way it's gonna be forever.
Well, I kind of think maybe that's almost the way it's gonna be, and not, even when it goes away, I think people are used to. I love the Zoom meetings, to be able to watch things from home. I attend way more meetings than I do when I have to get up and go in person. That's just me, maybe other people are different, but, I think, and it's, if we can use American Rescue Plan fund, we've gotten over $300,000 for the American Rescue Plan. They've just made some changes now to whether or not those funds are earmarked for certain things, but this was a approved expenditure, and it felt like, well, for $1,000 out of 300,000, maybe it would be a good investment to just make it easier for everybody. So, but any help that anybody can give us or ideas is appreciated.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat with whoever offline. We sort of show you what we do and how we do it, and we can try to adapt to that.
Okay. Then we'll just, I'll make a motion to table the technology conversation.
I'll second. Thanks, Dan.
Any other conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Poverty exemption guidelines. So Catherine Skull is on the meeting tonight. Rod, I don't know if you'll need to hop up and allow her to speak. She has submitted the poverty guidelines for this year. And I spoke to her this morning. She'd be happy to explain. She said there. Are you there, Catherine? Can you unmute yourself?
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can.
Okay. So the guidelines that you have before you are just basically the same guidelines that the township has been using for the last few years. We are just updating for the rate of inflation. The State Tax Commission last year changed the rules or the format a little bit and is requiring that municipalities use their application. So the application form that we use here at Sylvan is the application form issued by the State Tax Commission. The State Tax Commission does require, however, that each municipality approve their own asset levels and guidelines for use for hardship authorization on an annual basis. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. I know there's a few pages there in this packet.
Right, thank you, Catherine, and thanks for attaching all of this. It's not just the guidelines, but you've attached a lot of other things, information for us, and that's helpful. Appreciate that.
I will move to approve the hardship guidelines as presented.
Poverty exemption guidelines.
I'll second that.
For a motion by Kurt, supported by Amanda. Does the board have any other questions or discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
All right, next on our list is the discussion of the dissolution of the Water and Sewer Authority. And Mr. Thal has been helping us a little bit with this. We just kind of brought up the idea of dissolving the authority. And we kind of did a memo that I sent around to everyone. I don't know if it's in your packets. But I wondered that we feel like this is maybe, you know, the Water and Sewer Authority, it was originally an authority that contained Sylvan, Linden, and Lima. Lima has since pulled out, I think a long time ago. And it's just Sylvan Township and Linden Township. And Sylvan has the water department entirely in Sylvan. And the sewer department is mostly in Sylvan with only a small portion in Linden Township. And in fact, one of the three in Linden at the Cassidy Lake Prison is being closed. They're closed already, so that's even gonna reduce Linden's, you know, sewer, overall sewer by a third. Thank you. So we've come to this point where we're discussing maybe it's best to dissolve the authority and not have that sort of go-between, because a lot of the decisions, some of them, you know, maybe need to sit with the township as opposed to the authority. So this conversation has come up, like I said, Mr. Thal helped us and he had given us a memo. If he has any things he wants to follow up on.
Yeah. So yeah, I looked at, you know, the ability to disband the authority, and, you know, just kind of looked at it from the standpoint, like I work with a lot of authorities that function just fine and serve a good purpose. But when I look at your authority, it really is splintered and it doesn't seem to be functioning. And so what it does is it seems to create you know, just information void between the township, not really knowing everything you should know about the sewer system with an authority that really isn't operating as it should. I mean, you have a DPW department that could cover sewer and water. And, you know, Linden just has a small portion of sewer, which, you know, they can either contract with us to operate and maintain, or they could contract with somebody else to operate and maintain. But there really doesn't seem to be much purpose served by the authority any longer. And because you already have the water system that you handle and administer, it seems like if you just had one DPW that covers both water and sewer, it would work a lot better for probably the customers, for the township, and for anybody coming into the township in how they would deal with new development. So, you know, I just kind of went through my memo. I looked at your articles of incorporation, your documentation, and, you know, it is something that's doable, but both parties need to decide to do it. So, you know, if it's something that you want to move forward with, I think, you know, you make a simple motion to move forward with documentation to dissolve the authority. You'd look for the same kind of motion from Linden. Once they do that, then we could move forward the actual, you know, timeline and process for doing that.
And they're okay with doing that too, Rob.
Yeah, it just makes sense. It's just
Yeah.
one more layer of government or authority that you don't really need.
Because we're used to doing our own basically anyways, and Linda is already basically a customer.
Right.
So would we create a franchise agreement with Linden, just like we do with Chelsea? And then just treat everybody like a,
They would just be a customer of Sylvan Township.
Yeah, so it'd be more like a service agreement with them, because I don't think we manage their customers, do we?
No, we do not.
Yeah, they would probably build their own customers, but I mean, that would be up for discussion if they wanted us to do that and bill them for that service.
They do build their own customers now, Rob.
Okay, all right, so, yeah, I mean, so really it's just, they would be a customer of, I suppose their flow goes through our system, is that correct?
Correct. And we're talking
Yeah, so, I mean, like,
making it just the percentage, a flat rate
yeah,
that they pay, and then plus any major breakdowns or whatever that
Yep.
involves their flow.
yeah, it'll be a fairly simple agreement between the parties.
Yeah, I know when they talk about it, the authority, and I've had conversations with Pam Burns, and I know she's on board. She just wants to make sure that we are ready on our end to handle this transition. So,
Yep, that's why I think just a simple motion to start with by our board, their board make the same simple motion, to move forward, and then we can kind of work together and get it done.
I'll make the motion that we move forward with the documents to disband the sewer authority.
Second.
excuse me. All right, thank you. So we have a motion from Rob, supported by Sandy. Does the board have any discussion or questions? Excuse me. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. None. Okay, motion carried. So the last item that I added was the Leone Township SRI agreement. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. But I sent that to the board and also to Rob Paul. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to that other attorney today.
I had put in a call to him and I had already left by the time he called me back. So I can't tell you what, I don't have answers to some of my questions, with regard to that agreement.
Okay.
Because I sent around to the board some of my concerns regarding it. And I know Kurt sent around some of his concerns regarding it. It's hard for me I can't really recommend it at this point because I don't know how we have any responsibility for the bond debt on that SRI interceptor that they have that was funded by Jackson County issuing a bond with Leone Township, Hanover Township, and Liberty Township signing on to it. I don't know that we have any benefit of that interceptor. And if we don't, I don't know why. And we've not been part of the litigation. I don't know why we would be part of that. I have certain concerns regarding that, I think at a minimum, we'd have to have some kind of liability indemnity from them in case a ratepayer did not agree with how they were going to use the rates to pay for the debt that they didn't properly collect on. So I have some problems with it that I wish I could have got a hold of him and talked with him, but I called him, left a message, and by the time he called me back, I was already out of the office.
Okay. Well, I don't think there's any huge hurry. Like you said, I mean, we are not a party to this lawsuit. What they had requested were for the non-litigant municipalities to sign an acknowledgement and agreement. So I'm happy to not move on this right now. I don't think there's any urgency to it, and I'd rather wait and have your guidance, and if that guidance is after talking to him, we don't sign, then that's okay too. That's, we'll take the lead.
Yeah, I just think I need to talk to them a little bit more about what they're trying to do there.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. Thank you. We don't want to get into something we shouldn't.
I'll make a motion to table this.
Curtis, second.
Motion by Rod, supported by Kurt to table this item. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. I believe that's all for our business tonight on the agenda. Thank you everyone who logged in. It looks like a lot of people are gone. Sue Dickinson, Mr. Thal, thanks so much for zooming in tonight and helping us with these matters as always.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Okay, thanks, you too. All right, we have our final public comments. Yes, Scott.
I have some comments on some of the comments that I heard tonight. I'm just kind of curious. On the medical marijuana, Susie, you commented that we were looking for the revenue, or we needed some kind of revenue, and I'm just wondering what is not enough revenue for us, and why we need that kind of revenue when that business is, I think, is great, being in Ipsy and Jackson. Online payments for the services. How much money are we currently running through our system now in online payments? And is it worth it to pay for services to be able to receive online payments that we aren't getting? And will we be able to track those online payments like for zoning, in which when they're handed right to the zoning department, sometimes in the past, they've not been properly credited to the proper account, and a year or two later, we find out that we are either behind in collecting money, or we're supposed to send back money and never did. So I'm just wondering if we've taken a close look at if that system will do anything for us. On the DPW administrators pay allocation, I don't feel one way or another who it ends up paying for, but I think the township needs to maybe have an understanding with Paul that the employee is still an employee of the township, even though it might be paid through the authority. So I think there might need to be a couple of legal questions asked to make sure that an employee of the township is an employee of the township and not an employee of the authority, or vice versa. If it's going to be an employee of the authority, then maybe it's done that way, but I think there's a caution line of where that goes. The franchise agreement with the city, do we have any kind of agreement with the city right now?
Well, the franchise agreement that he sort of based is in the city ordinances, and Sylvan Township also has the same franchise agreement in our ordinances. If you go to Muni Code and look up our ordinances, you type in franchise, you will find the same ordinance that the Chelsea has without a legal description. It's also in our ordinances, and it does have a legal description. So at some point in the past, that was decided on by the board of Sylvan and of Chelsea, because it's one of our ordinance books.
But we don't have an agreement to work with each other. We just have the same agreement as an ordinance.
Correct. And then this will be.
So my question then around that is, we're talking about X number of homes in Westchester Farms. But if you remember, we've also got the Methodist home that is going to be wanting to come into Sylvan Township too. And that will require a bigger agreement with the city of Chelsea. And so I would want to do both together, or one as the same, and not be taking little bites, but have an agreement with the city for any and all services, rather than just Westchester Farms at this time, and this one at the next time, and this one at the next time. Because what's happening in a lot of these things tonight, you got, no offense to you, Mr. Golf, you're still on, but you got a lot of lawyers' fees that you're gonna be paying for in all these things, including like dissolution of water and sewer. Why? What if you do nothing? Does it cost anything? You've got agreements. If 5 years from now or 10 years from now, Lionel wants to come on and do something again, or Lyndon wants to come back, we've got to pay a lawyer to put together agreements again. So if, kind of if it works, don't fix it. And then then the open space, that's been hanging around a long time, and I just haven't know here. This should be a joint agreement, up or down vote. And has Carol given a report on what she thinks it should be? I mean, it has to do with zoning. Has she written a report, done a study to consider how it will affect zoning, and what is her recommendation? I mean, you don't have to
I was
take.
gonna say, I don't want to take time tonight to answer all your questions.
No, right,
but-
right. No,
but
I'm
we can-
posing it as a question.
Perfect.
That's all.
Wonderful. I'll get
But if she hasn't, she probably should, that's part of her gig. And she makes recommendations, not that the planning commission has to accept it, and not that you have to accept it. That's all I have.
Anybody else? Patrick?
Yes. First of all, I just heard in public comment here that CRC might want to join Sylvan Water. That's huge. It'll happen.
No.
It's-
See, the Methodist home is expanding their facilities out into Silver Township. So at some point, they and the city will need our services in that area. If you look behind Weinberg Dairy, which is part of Silver Township, that is eventually where they want to expand.
I'm glad that was clarified. It's still very interesting. What would be even nicer is if we had the reverse franchise agreement and Chelsea could take all of our customers. I don't know if that's been discussed with Chelsea. I mean, of course, I can bring it up for about 10 years, but we really be out of the water business if that could happen. I don't know if Chelsea even has the capacity to do that though. Anyway, what I really wanted to comment about, and I was hoping Roger Call would still be here, but it looks like he's not. There's a couple of the issues regarding the open space ordinance that need legal review. And it might be good to get those things reviewed ahead of time before Rebecca dives into her work with the planning commission. One thing that I heard yesterday from Rebecca that I hadn't heard before is that the difference between doing it as an overlay district versus just a straight ordinance as it is on the books right now. And I know when Rob wrote the draft a couple of years ago, it was as an overlay district. Rebecca said that's an extra roadblock that would require every project to undergo a rezoning process. I had not heard that before, but I'd like to make sure that we square this up with the township attorney, so we get the official legal opinion on whether an overlay district requires a rezoning to each parcel that takes advantage of it. And the second thing was about the private road stuff. The idea of having private roads allowed only within open space developments. Whether that is a viable legal option for the township down the road in the context of public roads being very hard to obtain over the rest of the township. That's not open space development, right? It would be tantamount to the township saying that there can be no roads of any type in site condominium projects unless they're open space developments. And a blanket ban of everything other than open space developments, to me, should be reviewed by the lawyer. I'm not saying this for my own purpose. I mean, I'm just thinking from the time to protect themselves, and I'm not proposing a model of space development. I'm just saying, be careful about that. There might be some other legal. First, we'll go through legal review. All those things. Those questions could be answered like that.
We were at board member comments. Andy.
So interestingly, today I attended a webinar on floodplain management. And I forwarded the handouts to Kathy, and so if you're interested, then she can, I can send them to you too, so no. Just not one more thing for you to do, okay? But there was a lot of technical information, and when they got to the part about being able to tell whether or not your ordinance was updated, thank goodness we have somebody who knows all of that, and we don't have to figure it out.
That's correct.
So something I would like to address, and I asked Attorney Fall about this because Rod does so much extra work for which he is not paid or recognized. So I asked Mr. Fall, I said, you know, and I talked to Rod about this, and he said, well, you know, statutory duties. Well, setting this up yesterday, running the meeting that you're not even a member of that group. I mean, there are hours a week that you spend doing that for which you don't get paid for it. It's a job description in other townships. They hire somebody to do this stuff. Rod updates the computers and spends hours running these Zoom meetings. And I propose that either we develop a job description and hire somebody from the outside to do those things, or we have a job description that takes care of the things that Rod does and that we pay him for it. Now, we can't do any retroactive pay. It has to be from whenever, if we decide to do that from that day forward. But it's pretty astonishing how much of this that he does on his own time, which I think, thank you, but you need to be removed. You need to be paid for doing this. It's a job in other townships and people get paid for it. So you should too.
Yeah, I agree, Sandy. I think, you know, and Rod has been really hosting these Zoom meetings for the past couple of years. And now that we're trying to do the transition to in-person, you know, we're all working on it. And the township has a tendency to sort of assign extra job duties to people. You know, the clerk is the sexton of the cemetery and has not been compensated for that ever since I've been here. So we want to make sure we're not doing that and not taking advantage of people. And I know Rod has said he's not looking for any extra compensation, but the other thing is, it's the flip side of that, I think, is like kind of keeping it real for the next person who comes in, maybe, you know, however many years from now when Rod's not here anymore doing treasurer, and then we're like, oh yeah, well, the treasurer also does the techie stuff, and that person might not have that ability to do those things. So, so it's not real. It's not, you know, we're not keeping to our statutory duties. And so I think, Sandy, that's a great conversation starter. And maybe it's going to parlay nice into something I was going to comment on was, I think tonight we should set up a budget meeting. And I talked to Kimberly Haynes, our accountant. She's available in the evening anytime. So we're getting a little bit later start on this than I wanted to. And part of it was that Kimberly has been so overwhelmed. Part of it is due to us, part of it is due to the duties of the Water and Sewer Authority, where she is also accountant. So she's had the job creep similar to, you know, she's the accountant, but then before she knew it, she was doing the billing, and before she knew it, she was asked to go out and do the water needs. And so she's done a real good job of setting her boundaries and saying, I'm the accountant, I'm not doing that. plus Rick Clement came back and we hired him as a consultant and he helped her get a lot of data entry done. So we're all up to speed. I think I got the good numbers to send to everybody. So when could we, do we want to set a date here while we're here? Because January is ticking away. I don't know, you just have to call it up. Do you want to go grab it? Is it in your office?
While she's running off and you're checking your calendars, the American Rescue Funds that you said you're allowed up to 300,000.
That's what we've received.
You've received 300,000.
Correct. All the different, every different municipalities received a different amount of money.
Right.
Right.
I wouldn't be looking, I mean, if it's for future meetings, I wouldn't be looking to go on the cheap for that. If you've got 300,000 to spend, not that you're gonna spend 300,000.
Correct.
But I wouldn't be looking for $1,000 Band-Aid.
Well, and that's the question, because really it's not any of our wheelhouse. Is it a Band-Aid or would $1,000 suffice for what we want? Because we're not super sophisticated either. So it's just a balance of investing, so we make a good decision.
No, but you might not spend 3, you might not spend 100,000. So maybe it is prudent to spend 50.
Well, we'll see. We'll get those numbers. All right, you're here with your calendar. Do we want to stick with the Tuesday? I know we have to avoid the 19th and the 27th because I believe there's already meetings those evenings. We could do the 18th next week or the 25th. On which day, the 18th? Sandy, does the 18th at 7 PM work for you for a budget
What
meeting?
day of the week is that?
It's Tuesday.
Let's do that. and make
Sure.
adjustments.
Good with you? Okay. All right, then we will set a budget meeting for Tuesday, the 18th, and we'll get a notice out for that, because that is a meeting. Oh, that's right, it got canceled. I have one other thing I wanted to mention. At the CAPNART meeting that I attended Thursday, our county commissioner, Jason Masiewski, was there. And he said that the court administrator of Washtenaw County is planning or looking into moving the court out of Chelsea. And so they would be moving the court to Saline. And he is very much not in favor of this. This would really take the court presence out of Western Washtenaw County. Saline is not an easy trip for someone to make from this area to go to court. On the call was Suzanne Flowers from WATS, which is Western Washtenaw Area Transportation System. She pointed out that there's no singular transportation mode that you could take there. You'd have to take Wave to a certain point, then a different bus in. And so this is a problem. Mr. Masiewski said he believes this has been part of the court administrator's plan for years, even before he was involved with the county commissioners. So he is not sure that it will be successful to oppose this, but one thing he was saying in what he would favor also is in lieu of a court presence, maybe they could have like an extension office or a satellite office for the court, where they would have something here in Chelsea. People could go in, get documents, maybe get court assistance, so that there's some touchstone in this area for the Washtenaw County courts. So Greg Dill, I believe the administrator of Washtenaw County, is going to be attending the February 7th Chelsea City Council meeting to talk about this. And then I believe Mayor Pacheco and Jason are planning on a town hall style open house for public feedback on this on February 23rd. So the city council meeting will be on the 7th. We'll get more details, and then February 23rd is a date where people can come together. We'll hear the information on the 7th, have a little time to digest it, and let them know what our feelings are about that. just wanted to mention that to everybody, so you could go and listen to it if you want to, because I know we all feel sometimes out here in Western Washtenaw like we're overlooked, don't exist. And so this will be, it's not a great thing, you know, he acknowledges the court in Chelsea is not a good place. They don't have space to hold defendants. It's not very safe. It's very old. They would need a lot of upgrades to it. And seeing how it's been part of their plan for a long time to do this, it may be a moot point to resist that, but maybe an alternative is that we could push for some other type of situation. So I just wanted to mention that to everyone. Yeah.
So they're gonna want like a letter of support from the township.
Well, that's a great question, Sandy. I hadn't thought about that. We will have another meeting. Our February meeting will be before the 7th. So if that's something that we want to do, I could pen something and send it around and you know, a letter of support. That's a good idea. Okay. All right, any other board comments?
I had a 2-hour CAFA work session today. It seems to me that the majority of the people on the CAFA board want to see CAFA become a ambulance transport service also. You know, personally, I'm not in favor of that. I'm not there yet. I'd like to see us work with HVA instead of reinventing the wheel. I'd like to see us work with HVA and talk more about where we think they're falling short. I don't think we have enough data to support, to make me feel comfortable enough to say, yeah, it's just not working with HVA. We have to do this ourselves. If we do it ourselves, it will be a taxpayer subsidized and transport. There's no way around it. And I'm of the feeling that if we're going to do that, we should have the taxpayers vote on it. And if taxpayers say, yeah, the service is horrible, we want a higher level of service and we're willing to pay for it, you know, and pass the millage for it and deal with that versus the way we're sort of sneaking into it. We're trying to get some safer grant money. And once we get the grant money, then we'll hire people. And then after 3 years, then you got to do something with it.
And they're also coming from the point of, well, we'll be able to pay for this. The funds collected from doing it. When? There is no time frame when that can happen because there's a lot of things to go through before they can do that, before they can bill an insurance company. So like Kurt said, as of right now and for the foreseeable future, it's all subsidized by us.
Wait, I'm not sure I understand that, because when he came into the presentation, he said, I mean, isn't that what HVA does, is bill insurance companies? So why can't they do the same?
We don't have the credentials.
Oh, because, well, then they need the credentials.
Yeah, we're not set up to do billing, but that's a good question because I asked HVA to come in and do a presentation at the CAFA board meeting. They did that. And I asked that same question.
Yeah.
And they have certain transports that they do that generate lots of revenue.
Right.
And those customers are subsidizing the customers that they can't collect from. So that's their business model. Now, you could argue, well, can CAFA do that same thing? We want to do, where they seem to make a lot of money is transporting, you know, somebody from the CRC to the hospital there to a doctor visit. They actually schedule those in advance, and insurance companies pay for those, and they're fully funded, and that's where they make their profit. So could CAFA do that also? I'm looking at it and saying, well, before we take that on, why don't we try and fix the system we have? There isn't a single fire department within Washtenaw County that is currently doing transport. You know, Wayne County, Oakland County, there are multiple fire departments that do it. I'd like to just work with HVA a little more, but the chief and the chair, they're sort of throwing in the towel, saying we would try and work with those guys for, you know, many, many years, and it's only getting worse. So, but I'd like to see more data.
good luck with that.
Yeah,
It sounds really complicated and not just our county.
It's kind of two against everybody else.
That's all I have.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
I have a question about what we just did, what you just did. Isn't that what usually is in the departmental?
It
things that
is,
we
yeah.
all are in consent agenda all the time, and we just,
The reports that are in there, right?
so why weren't these done tonight? back
Well,
then?
for me, this meeting was Thursday of last week and the board packets had already been produced by that point. And I think sometimes too, points get missed when they're just in the board packet. I'm not sure if people really go through and read those reports very much. So if there's anything that I want to highlight or I think is of particular interest to residents or people who are attending, I think it's important for us to really say those out loud so it hits people's ears, because otherwise it might get missed. And it really takes maybe 5 minutes that we took for that.
But,
tonight, so.
but this isn't memorialized, those reports are memorialized because they are in writing.
Right.
Normal is not memorialized.
Well, it depends on the minutes and the clerk. You know, she may put them in the
And
minutes,
she
and
could
so,
miss
right?
something that is important. So somebody missing something because they didn't read it, or because they didn't see it, because they
Well, but
didn't
the
hear
other
it.
thing is the board packets were already produced by the time I went to the meeting, so I can't, you know, I mean, there's certain things that are coming up in our pressing, so.
Just question.
Okay, appreciate that. Any other board?
I'm good. I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, move to adjourn at, what time is it, 9:02.
9:02.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Yeah. Yep.
Could I ask you a question?
You bet.
Okay,
So as we're looking at whatever we're gonna end up with for.
Yeah.
I am. Sitting